Hello there, my name is Ahmed Hussein and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how you can integrate AI into your Spring Boot project. We will start with the simple Spring Boot API. We already implemented one in our previous videos. You can enter my channel and check the oldest videos if you haven't watched it already. But for now, I will focus on integrating AI in my Spring Boot backend. So, what I need when integrating AI into your Spring Boot project, you first need to decide which provider or model you will use. There is a several options to pick the AI provider. We can use OpenAI as our main API, and that's what I will use in this video. Why? It's kinda stable and it will include a very powerful models like GPT 3.5 and GPT-4 and even GPT-5. But you have to know that you will have to pay for this service because it's not a free service and requires internet connection and API key. I will leave the link on the description of this video or even in the comments section. But you are free to choose any other API services or go for local AI like Olama and GPT for all. At the end of this video, you will have an AI backend running in Spring Boot and you will have a smart responses on the endpoint that you will specifically use the AI model on it. So let's start it. So inside my application, I have to do a few things in order to integrate the OpenAI information in my Spring Boot application. So I have to create a configuration file. Let me create it. I'll create a new class and I will call it OpenAI config as you see on the screen. And I will declare this class as a component. So I have to add a component. Let me add it. Component. Let me import it in my packages. All right. So what I need to do next is to make this configuration file with a prefix name, and I will use this name later inside my application properties. So under my component, I'm going to declare uh, a configuration properties, so I can use it inside my application properties later. And I will give it a prefix name, and this name, I will give it a familiar name to me so I can use it later inside my application properties. And I will give it a name of uh, OpenAI, maybe .api. So let me write it down. OpenAI .api. So with this prefix name, I will later call it inside my application properties to set my key and URL and model. So inside my class, I need to declare variables. These variables will be key and API URL, the URL that I will use to communicate with GPT model, and I will declare the model name that I will use it later. So the API model that I will use, I have to set it inside this config class. So I will create a private variable. Let me do some comments here. Key. Let me close the comment. Let me organize it a little bit. And I will write a private variable, a private string variable, and I will call it a key. And another private string variable, and I should call it a URL. And another private string variable, and I will call it model. Model. And now I need to create a getters and setters for those variables so I can call it later and set it in my application properties as well. So I have to right click and create a getter and setter on my class. And I just created a getter and setters for my variables that I just created. So inside my application properties, I have to use this class and I have to set the information based on my needs. So I will create a comment and I will call it OpenAI, and I will just write down a config as a configuration. And now I have to call this class that I just created because it's a configuration class. So Spring Boot will read it as a configuration properties. So I need to set it with the prefix name that I created before already. So I will just call my OpenAI.api and I will set the key. And you will find the properties already that you created as getters and setters. And then after the key, I have to set the URL. And after the URL, I have to set my model. So related to the key, you don't have to store it directly inside your application properties. Well, let me add some comments so you can see it later on the GitHub. And I will just make a note that this key should be safely stored somewhere. And the rest can be set normally. So I will just write only these things so you can read it later in my GitHub repository. So let me, okay, my key, this project will be stored in system variables. So this key in my project, I will store it inside my system variable in my Windows because I use Windows. You can do it the same in Linux or wherever you are going to use this project on. And this is the name that I created in my system variable. I can't show it actually the secret API key, and you never attempt to send it to your client side and never attempt to give it to someone else. So I will put my OpenAI URL and I have to specify the model, which model I will use. And let me use GPT-4o. It's a cheaper, by the way. And that's it. I just set my application properties. I have to call Marvin to clean my project. And I just clean my project. And after that, I have to go for Marvin and update my project. It'll take some time. And here we go. So my information has been set and everything should be ready to go. And in my next step, I will create another configuration file. And this is for REST template. And you can see it over there inside my config. And I will use this config file or config class to communicate with my API and make a REST calls. And this my configuration file and my configuration class. This is a REST template configuration, so it will simply make my REST calls. Now inside my service, I need to do some stuff to start communicating with my GPT model or the AI that I will use. So I need to go for my service and start to create a service, and I will call it GBT service. This is my class, as you can see in the screen now. And I have to set this service with annotation of service. So I have to set an annotation before the class so Spring Boot knows that this is my service. But first of all, I have to write a few variables over there. So I have first to get my configuration that I store the API information inside it. So I will declare a private variable and I will say open AI config and I will give it a name of AI config so I can use it later. And let me import it. Import it. Okay. And now I have to create a getter and setters. Simply you can go to the file and generate getter and setters for this config. Basically, I will not need this set AI config, but I will leave it for now. And now I have to create a public class for my GTP service. And also I have to define my REST template because I will use REST template to communicate with my REST API. So I will communicate with ChatGPT with this REST template. So I will define a variable and I will call it REST template, as you can see in the screen. And I will give it a name of mm, maybe REST TEMP, for example, or I want it to be a friendly name. So that way can be better. You can choose any name actually, it's a variable, but you have to define the variable the way that you find it useful for you later so you can remember it and call it. So what next? I need a thing that will parse and read the responses as JSON. So I will expect a response as JSON from the body of this API. So I need an object that I will use. Let me use an object mapper so I can simply read those JSON records later. Let me also give it a friendly name. This name may be, you can simply use any name. So I will go for OPG mapper. I will just write a comment here to read the JSON and I have to import it in my packages. So the reason I use object mapper is to read and parse this JSON data safely. So I don't risk by reading large information, for example. So I have to set those information, to set those variables, and I will later set them as a final variables. But let me create a public call for my GPT service. And let me declare it as a service. And let me import service. And here we go. And for now, I have to set those variables inside my GTP service. So for OpenAI config, I will just pass it as a parameter. And as well, my REST template, I will just pass it in my my GBT service parameter. And as well, my object mapper inside my GBT service parameter. Let me not forget to declare them as a final variables. So set them as a final for each one. Right here, I have to initialize them. So this AI config will be equal the parameter that I passed, AI config, and this as well, rest equal object mapper. So object mapper will be equal to my object mapper, and as well the rest template will be equal to my rest template parameter. And let me close the quotation. Now I just added my information that I will use from now on inside my service. So whenever I call, I will make a call to the API of the ChatGPT or OpenAI, sorry, OpenAI GPT model, and it's basically will act like a ChatGPT. So when a user put a parameter in the end of the URL call that he will create. And by the way, I have to remove this set AI config. I don't need a setter for this one, as I mentioned before. And that's it. When a user enter my URL and put a parameter in the URL with a message, I have to read it. And when I read it, I expect to send him back a response. But now, let me try to create a new method. I just write down here, I will start to uh, run my GPT calls, something like that. And you can read this project later, and I will make sure that my calls are asynchronized. And we already discussed this matter in our previous videos. So I will create a new public completable future method. So I will public and I will write completable future. Okay. And I have to give it a name. I will call it ask uh, GBT. Let me correct it. GBT. Okay. Let me open and close the bracket. Let me import my completable future. Let me import my map. And now here I have to create my logic. So I will use a hash map so I can use it safely. Hash map. Let me import hash map. And here we go. We just defined our map that will be a result after we have a successful calls. But let me try to make a try block. So if there is anything wrong will happen inside my method, it will catch it or even print it to my browser or even in the console. So let me create that logic now. I'll try. Let me open and close the bracket. And I have to catch any exception will be have inside this block. So I will just try catch. I can call it later. And if I got an exception, I will fill this results with an information message or a message with the error that I got or I have something wrong. So how I'm going to do that? I will just write down results dot put Here I will just write error contacting GBT uh, service, and I have to give it a key. So let me first try to put a key here, and the key should be message, I guess, message. And I have to remove this E and remove the comma. And I will just, I'm a free here, but I will just put maybe, no, not to string. I will use get message. So let me remove this to string, and I will get the message of the error that happened or the exception happened. And it will be printed in my browser in this case because I will return these results, and my method will be expected to return a results as a hash map that have a record of JSON record like message and the included message. In my case, when I catch an error, it will give an error contacting GBT service. And now, when everything is done correctly, I have to return completable future with my map. The results that I just set it over there. So I have to write completable future, and I'll choose completed future, and I'll just provide my, let me remove this now. I'll just provide my results. Now we'll close it. And I just don't want to make this video any longer, so let me correct stuff over here. So you can find this project source code inside my repository in my GitHub. And now inside my default controller, I have to define or auto-wire my service. So how I'm gonna do that? I will just go to my default controller and add a notation of auto-wire. And then I will call my service name, and I just call my service GBT service. So let's go to the service and take the name from there. Scroll up, GBT. This is my service. So I have to auto-wire it to my default controller so I can call it later. And I will call my GBT service. Let me import it. That's it. Now let me think of it will be like chat, and I can make the parameter message, and it should be equal to the user message that will be sent. So if the user put my chat parameter inside my server IP and specify the endpoint of chat and add a question mark and put the message, and this message will be, for example, equal hello, so I should take it and ask ChatGPT to communicate with it. So I defined my get mapping with my endpoint that will target this kind of asks GPT method. So I call it chat. And I don't want to make this video any longer, so I will implement the logic, and I will just provide you the results so you can see uh, what is the result by communicating inside my Spring Boot application. I don't want to waste your time any longer, so I will just implement the logic, and you can see it later in my GitHub link. And inside my get mapping, I will expect chat and question mark and the parameter of message, and then hello. So let me first bring my browser in OBS. 1 second. And inside my browser, I will just write local and chat and message hello. And you can see, hi there, how can I assist you? If I make it pretty so you can check that model where GPT 4.0 or 4.0, and the response where, hi there, how I can assist you. What I'll just say, can you tell me some story? Let me see the response. And here we go. Of course, here is a short story for you. And he started to tell me a story. So, whatever I write inside my message parameter, hello again, and you will find the response and how can I assist you. And this is how you integrate an OpenAI API inside your Spring Boot backend. As well, let me bring the Spring Boot IDE. So this is my service, and I will already publish this repository in my GitHub. So I will provide my GitHub URL, and you can look for this project inside uh, my repositories. And I will call it Spring Boot Basic Server. And you can look for the service that have been created, and you can look for the logic. We used asynchronize, and later on we use completable future, and we start communicate with our API. And there is a very important thing that you have to always take care of. Do not ever publish your key. This key is stored in my system environment. And do not ever attempt to send it to your client, or do not think of making any back-end stuff inside your client side. So you will always need to authenticate your clients and make them send you a request, and you can authorize them to make this request or not. So it's very important to safely store your API key. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video. Have a great day.